What's going on, people? Welcome to the Freedmen
and ADOS. Everybody? Welcome.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What is it? October 12th? Is this?
Oh yeah, October
another
12th.
Tuesday?
Yeah, another Tuesday, man. What number is this?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
got to be in the 20s.
Yeah, we way over 20s. I think the last one was 23 or 24.
Man, we should know. I'm gonna figure it out. I apologize. But welcome everybody. If you're watching us live on Facebook, please share this on your Facebook. If you're watching us live on YouTube, share this on your Twitter. Drop that YouTube link on your Twitter, hashtag that every which way you can. You know, we're going to get into a really powerful discussion today. I'm Darvell. I'm over here chopping it up from unknown locations. We're not going to discuss. Some people might know. Otherwise, I need to keep it off the radar. I'm going to hand it to Steven and Adolph, Rocket, and Ernest to introduce themselves, though.
Hey, how y'all doing, man? It's Steven here today, aka Conspiracy Brother. Ready to get into the show, have a dialogue about current events, what's going on. My setup has been laggy the last couple shows, so I feel like they didn't figure out my they didn't figure out my vibrations or whatever, so I might have to try to do something else. But I'm ready to get to the show, man. Freedmen versus ADOS versus what? B1 versus LGBTQ versus everybody. Detroit versus everybody.
Versus cancel culture versus everything. Versus
everybody, We'll go into it, bro.
Don't call Tommy Walker. We ain't mean no offense.
Right, we already getting copyright strikes on fair use. YouTube is playing, bro.
Hey, while we got y'all here before Adolph goes, listen, y'all got to pay attention to our Facebook and our Twitter. Twitter's already been coming down on New Black Media as it is. We're starting to get hits already for frivolous stuff. So just, make sure you keep tuned on social media so know where we are. We might move platforms. You never know. Go ahead, Gerard, man. I got to be quiet.
Yeah, that's all good, man. Sean, you're your resident Detroit political commentator, man. Adolph J. Rocky, otherwise known as Gerard Ibn Lamont, coming from all the east side of Detroit, y'all. We're going to have a good show tonight, man.
Yep. What's going on, everybody? This is Ernest. I'm out here in Lansing. Just to reiterate what Darvell said earlier, make sure you guys smash that like button, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to our channel, but also share this video. Like always, we got another good dialogue to get into, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you guys. Hopefully, we got some callers. Darvell, do we have a call line up for today's show?
Oh, yeah, we do have the call lines up. So I'm going to go ahead and put that at the bottom of the screen for the good people. There's the number. 425-436-6362. Put the code in. We'll see you hit the queue. And when you hit the queue, we'll pull you in. But until we pull you in, you're going to be listening to music. So don't trip. If you hear the music, you're good. All right. If you don't hear the music, it might be somebody else in the queue with you. So talk it up with them. We're going to have a good show. But yeah, call in because you're probably going to have something to say about this stuff. Right, Ernest?
Mm-hmm. So now we got housekeeping out the way. I think it's like always, we're going to go ahead and jump into the local beat. I know Gerard and Darvell, they got some interesting information for you guys as it relates to recent reparations, legislation developments, and other good jazz. So I'll let you guys take it from there.
Well, as Gerard starts to talk about this, I just want to show something I ran across recently. What we're about to talk about is going to send some people's blood pressure through the roof. And if it doesn't, then maybe you don't understand it properly, because this is not a joke. If you don't feel some type of way after we're done with this show today, then you may not understand what we said. And I apologize if you don't understand. We're going to make it clear. But this Health Champion site done a report, and they figured out the top U.S. cities with the highest rates of hypertension. And Detroit came in second. It's only behind Gary, Indiana. I know a fine young lady from Gary, Indiana, but that's besides the point. Gary, Indiana is smaller than Detroit, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, Michael Jackson and them from Gary, Indiana, I think. I see what the Jacksons from.
Yeah, that's right.
Coming in at 52% on the hypertension. Detroit's coming in at 47.2%. And no wonder. That's kind of why I might not be there right now, because that hypertension is serious.
Hey, Flint right behind it. Damn.
Oh, look at that. That's no good.
Flint above Birmingham, Alabama. Wow.
I'm mad that Birmingham is even that high. Why is Birmingham even that high on the list, bro?
Jackson, Mississippi, Mobile, Alabama. You know what? This is our country cousins in the South. You know what I'm saying? Where our origins are, where our freedmen come from, and it just traveled with us. You know, wherever we went. All right. So all these locations are where mostly black people are freedmen, descendants of freedmen are located. It's no surprise.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Ain't that right? Mobile, Jackson.
Yep, Jackson, Mississippi. Yep, that's where I'm from.
Oh my goodness, man, this is not.
I mean, it's safe to say that you could say 50% of the American black population is accounted for in the cities listed there.
Yep. Shreveport, Lake Charles, Louisiana, Montgomery, Alabama, Macon, Alabama, Cleveland, Memphis, Baton Rouge. Yep, you name it.
That is not good.
High
man.
percentages of freedmen population.
Wow. So I guess that they have that little issue going on there because it seems like they're missing some reparations. Maybe some people missing some money, Gerard.
I think so,
man. What's going on with that?
Yeah,
the city of Detroit, they got some proposals out though, don't they?
Yeah, they do, man. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen.
Oh, you want to share your screen, sir? Let's do it.
If you don't mind.
Yep.
Let me share them.
I do have it too.
So we're gonna talk about the first one, which is not as bad, and then we will talk about the other one that is just totally bad.
Okay, so I'm going to share your screen, Gerard. What you got up right now for the people so y'all understand what we're talking about going on in Detroit? And I know we got Brother Ramon coming in. Ramon, we see you. We're going to pull you in a second. Gerard, go ahead and spin it for the people.
Okay, so back in this past summer, that's all I'm going to say about that because I've tried to. Okay, you know what? I do actually have that. Let me see here. There was a resolution that was passed that was introduced by pro tem President Mary Sheffield. Let me see. Did it change, Darville? Did it change?
I'm looking at the Detroit City Council votes to add reparations committee question to the November ballot.
Exactly. So this was in the summertime. Again, I was right about that. It was summer. I didn't know exact date. July 20th. So the pro tem President Mary Sheffield. She introduced this resolution to be for the council to add this particular measure on the ballot, a commission to study reparations in the city of Detroit. The council proposed questions as should the city of Detroit establish a reparations committee to make recommendations for housing and economic development programs that address historical discrimination against Black community in Detroit. Like, on the surface, it looks real good. You know what I'm saying? On the surface, but if you don't have that freedman eye, things
miss something.
Yeah, you might miss something. And I believe her in spirit. She could be coming from the right place, but I think we gotta ensure that we get to her and talk to her. But anyways, let's continue going before you go. That's I'm getting ahead of myself. The resolution will not be passed to Detroit's election commission to determine if the legal requirements for inclusion on the ballot are met. It was because it's on the ballot. It says here, it says Pro Tem Mary Sheffield sponsored 2 resolutions on reparations that acknowledge African Americans have been systematically, continually, and unjustly enslaved, segregated, incarcerated, denied housing through racist practices and redlining. Okay, let's see again. The resolution regarding reparations was the first of its kind to reach Detroit City's council, she noted. First of its kind.
Yep. First of its kind. She's breaking ground here. In
Detroit, she is, but as we know, there was measures already, and what was it, guys? I always get the name.
Evanston, Indiana.
Indiana, and I believe it was another city. It was another city as well. So it's not the first of the nation.
Asheville.
What was that, Ernest?
Asheville, North Carolina.
Asheville, North Carolina. So this would be, I guess, the third city, but it definitely is the first predominantly Black major city to have this type of measure on this ballot to be voted upon. Okay, she talks about the discrimination policies. We know about that. So here's where this is where it kind of gets funny-duddy for me. All right, so following George Floyd's death, the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement in the 2020 presidential election, conversations about reparations resurfaced. Well, we all know why it resurfaced. It was because of the ADOS movement, okay? That's why it resurfaced. So we give credit where credit is due, even though we are no longer officially associated with them in a organizational fashion. But you know, we are always in line with, you know, at least from, if not symbolically, if not a working relationship, at least symbolically, we are in line with all reparationists that focus on, you know, those descendants of chattel slavery to receive reparations. And that's the reason why that came up. But of course, you know, that was you're not going to get that in the Detroit news. The developments prompted Sheffield to meet with members of the Michigan Democratic Party Black Caucus.
What? We know those guys.
Yes.
Mr.
Keith Williams. And we're going to talk about, that's part of what we're going to kind of talk about as far as what our recommendations are as in regards to voting up and down on R, as well as another proposal. We're going to get into that later. But anyways, so Keith Williams, the City Planning Commission and Reparations Task Force, right? So that is coming out of Proposal P. The proposal, we covered that in a couple of previous episodes. There was a proposal there was actually a commission that was you know, the city of Detroit in 2018 had decided to say, hey, we want a new charter that was elected, and we went ahead, and so that commission came into being, and so and then they had a reparations committee in that commission process. They asked for the proposed question to be on the ballot, Sheffield said, to gauge the interest of residents. The council could have formed its own reparations committee, but it was essential to get voter input to showcase the demand, said Keith Williams, chair of the Michigan Democratic Black Caucus. Then later on, he would introduce his own bill, which we would talk about. We would introduce his own proposal, which would morph into Proposal S.
Okay, so just to be clear, we're talking about Proposal R right now as Gerard is stepping through this. Go ahead, Gerard.
Yep. So we're talking about that. So anyways, but she was influenced by these people. So this is why, you know, we'll get into some of our analysis about that, why I'm kind of skeptical. So I'm excited. We worked on this since February. They gave the citizens of Detroit a chance to vote on their future and now. Okay, there's Williams again. Lauren Hood, chair of the City Planning Commission, said the next step is to launch an education campaign. I haven't heard anything about it. Where's this education campaign? Councilman Scott Benson questioned if the ballot initiative would restrict the committee's work to housing and economic programs, but Whitaker said the term is broad enough to go with the nature of research that's done by the committee ultimately. Okay, so the reparations for slavery have gained national momentum this year after the U.S. House Committee advanced for the first time. We're talking about H.R. 40, reparations. I'm trying to get as much about the committee because there's not that much information in regards to how the committee makeup is going to be, what's the power of the committee, how it's going to be organized. None of that is really covered in anything that I've seen online to note that political education, that education about the committee, that has sorely have not been done. And there's no thing in print that I was able to really find out exactly about the actual committee itself. You know, how many people are on the committee? You know, none of that's laid out. Even the proposal is not laid out.
So this is Proposal R, City Reparations Committee advisory question, right?
Exactly.
Any other high level things on this one? Proposal R before I show them that Ballotpedia site as well.
Well, we're gonna I have it up. Do you guys see that? I changed it.
Go ahead.
Yep. So this is the proposal as you know. This is it, and we'll go through it. So Council Pro Tem directed the Legislative Policy Division to place a reparations ballot question before the voters during the November general election. The draft resolution is attached. If the council has any questions on that's just kind of like the preamble type stuff. So, but this is the meat and potatoes of it. So, so it says by Council President Pro Tem Mary Sheffield, whereas Detroit City Council recently passed and adopted a unanimous resolution supporting community reparations for Black Detroit. Community reparations for Black Detroit. Okay. And Whereas an initial step in implementing the council resolution will be for public affirmation of support for reparations at a regular city election. So that's what's happening November 2nd. It's on the ballot. That's so we've gotten this part. This part we talked about in the Detroit news. This part is still yet to, is on the ballot for Detroit voters to vote on November 2nd. Whereas Section 3-105 of the city charter provides that the council may submit by resolution, adopt not less than 70 days before any election, any proposal to voters of the city. So that was done because it was voted on July 20th. So they met that mark. Whereas implementation of reparations for Black Detroit would be materially aided by establishing a voter-supported reparations committee. Now, I don't know what that means. I hope that means
voter supported. That's kind of vague, but go ahead.
That's vague because it doesn't say that the election is going to be held. So voter supported.
Vague is not good in these cases, people.
Yeah, to make recommendations for housing and economic development programs that address historical discrimination against the Black community in Detroit. And now, therefore, it be resolved that a voter initiative shall be placed on the November 2021 ballot asking, should the city of Detroit establish a reparations committee to make recommendations for housing and economic development programs that address historical discrimination against the Black community in Detroit. Okay. So this is it. This is it. This is all that we know of, all that I've been able to find in print. If there's something beyond the scope of that was not covered in what we just covered in that article, and this is the actual draft reso ballot. Is we got this off of Ballotpedia. Okay, and this is it right here. And this is what you see. All of this is not even going to be on there. This on your ballot is going to be this question.
Oh, let me show them. Let me show them the ballot real quick. So
go ahead.
Close it up with ballot R, with proposal R, and then we're going to pivot to proposal P or S. I get that. Okay. And then we're going to bring Ramon in and we're going to discuss this overall, right? So
right.
Detroit, Michigan, proposal R, City Reparations Committee advisory question on the November ballot. You got a yes and a no, people. You got two options, right? If you vote yes, you are supporting creating a city reparations committee tasked with making recommendations for housing and economic development programs for Black Detroit residents. If you vote no, this vote opposes creating a city reparations committee tasked with making recommendations for housing and economic development programs for Black Detroit residents. This is at least specific to Black, but you're going to learn in today's show. We're going to go in so deep. Please get your popcorn and your drink. We're going to explain that Black ain't good enough, but that's what the ballot says for this measure, this proposal R. Should the city of Detroit establish a reparations committee to make recommendations? There's no binding requirement of anything they recommend to go into law with this committee, but it's a committee to do some type of study, apparently, for housing and economic development programs. So we said there are the supporters. We talked about Mary Sheffield. A whole bunch of people signed on to it. Lauren Hood's a part of it. And we know the Michigan Democratic Party Black Caucus is in support of it on paper, right?
Right, Keith Williams, yep.
There's some arguments that you wanted to mention. You said keep going?
No. I was just saying Keith Williams.
Oh, yeah, Keith Williams. Right, exactly. So that's R, right? But there's another one, right? We got a second one.
S.
Yes. Look at this. So I'm going to look at the Ballotpedia, then you can pull up the actual text of the piece. So Detroit, Michigan, again, proposal S. Now we're on the second proposal. Allow ballot initiatives to appropriate city funds amendment. So this is an amendment to the city charter, okay? This is different. This is not a commission. This is not a group of people. This is an amendment to the city charter. You know, we just had Prop P, right? That was a whole new charter, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a whole, but this is just an amendment to the existing charter that was passed, I believe, in 2012. I think that's the last legal charter that was passed, that got passed by the voters.
Exactly. So this was amending the 2012 charter. So you got yes or a no again for amendment for proposal S. A yes supports amending the city charter to remove language that prohibits an initiative from passing any ordinance for the appropriation of money.
We're not seeing that right now. We're still seeing the arguments for
what? You know what? I apologize, my good people. Thank you. I deeply apologize about that. Let me get it clear for the people. All right, here we go. All right, so proposal S. And so a yes on proposal S, which is the allowing ballot initiatives to appropriate city funds. If you vote yes on proposal S, you will be removing language from the city charter, which currently prohibits an initiative from passing any ordinance for the appropriation of money, which thereby allows citizen initiatives to propose ordinances that appropriate city funds, right? So Gerard's going to expound upon this, but if you vote yes, you're making a modification to the city charter, which now will enable citizen initiatives to propose ordinances that appropriate city funds. This can open the gate for a whole bunch of fund appropriation that currently cannot be done, right?
Right.
If you vote no, it changes nothing. It leaves everything as is, right?
Right.
And it requires a simple majority to approve it. So that's S. Gerard, do you have the language of S pulled up, or do you want me to pull it?
I do have through the Cranes article. I have it. I believe I'm
surely. Let's go ahead and look at that Cranes piece. Go ahead.
Okay, so proposal S on the Detroit ballot as a backstop on reparations. Now, when we just read, did that say anything about reparations for proposal S?
Nah, it's more so appropriations bill.
It's appropriate, exactly. But the way it's being marketed, it is that it's a backstop to appropriations. I'm sorry, to reparations. I'm getting the words mixed up. All right. The measure would give voters ability to appropriate city funds. So this is okay. So if I can over here on the right hand side is the actual language. So the following language for proposal S, as it appears on Detroit's November 2 ballot. You read it out already, brother. You just read it out. The change the change proposal S makes is to remove a clause in the existing charter that prohibits the appropriation by funding by voters. To show exactly what's the changing follow is the original charter section, which part will be removed, shown in bold. So this part right here, or any ordinance of appropriation of money. However, these powers do not extend. Okay, so the voters of the city reserve the power to enact city ordinances called the initiative, and the power to nullify ordinances enacted by the city called the referendum. However, these powers do not extend to budget or any ordinance for the appropriation of money. If you vote yes, you're removing this out. You're removing this bold area out. But let's talk about. But what I like about this article is Cranes, man. I'm telling you, boy, they really do report a lot about Detroit.
I know Cranes be coming through, and you know, that's even that bread and butter. They just because ain't nobody else trying to talk about nothing for real. So
right.
Keep going.
Yeah. So the November ballot is. So it says proposal staunchly opposed by Mayor Mike Duggan. Of course, why wouldn't it be? That's another thing. We'll talk about that. Detroiters will vote on November 2nd. Proposal S, which is passed, will mark a significant pivot in the city toward direct democracy that will give citizens direct power over city spending. The initiative, backed by social welfare organization The People's Voice, would enable residents to enact initiatives by public vote that appropriate city money for purposes they choose. Proposal S has an arduous and litigation line journey to the ballot. And that's what we're here to talk about, because we have some inside information about how Proposal S came to be. Okay, because initially it was another reparations measure. We've covered it in previous shows. We'll keep on going to talk about this. It's part of a push towards giving Detroit residents who feel shut out of government specifically a say in instituting government programs that give reparations for historic injustices against Black residents. So as we can see, this is what is being touted as a possible use of Proposal S, but it's not the only use that Proposal S could be used for. And that's what we're saying, why we believe that, hey, this has opened up the floodgates for us.
Yeah, that's actually kind of dangerous because it can be abused in a sense. Because could I foresee like dark money programs pushing ideas on the public and the public voting for random ordinances to appropriate money to people?
And they're getting fooled that it's good for them, like Proposal N was.
I was going to say, what was that? What was Proposal P? What was Proposal P? Wasn't that the?
That was the charter.
Oh no, I always get Prop P. Yeah. The new charter. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Prop N. Yeah, okay. You're right. Yep. Right.
So it goes on to say, I won't cover this because we already talked about that. Detroiters will be simultaneously voting on proposal R. But see, this is being packaged as such. So here we got here. This is actual Mr. Todd Perkins. He's the guy who's leading this effort. But he got this effort originally from Keith Williams. Okay. The People's Voice, founded by attorney Todd Perkins, is pushing for Detroiters to vote yes on proposal S and R as a pair. The former was created as a fail-safe move if elected officials aren't as aggressive as they need to be when it's time to act on reparations, said Perkins, principal of Detroit-based Perkins Law Group, PLLC. In the case, voters should go. So in case the voters could go back to the ballot and do something revolutionary, like get reparations approved themselves. Okay, we're going to talk about that. Reparations approved themselves out of city money.
That's already that's already a non-starter, B. That's already a non-starter.
Yeah, exactly. Perkins said it's time to build a new avenue toward reparations that empowers Black residents after you felt nothing but frustration and consternation trying to get there. However, the effort has drawn a fervent rebuke from city government leaders. We got this. So we won't go into all of that. I'm trying to see here. Where we can go. Legal battle. Proposal S almost didn't get on the ballot in the first place because there was local pressure pushing against this particular proposal when it was named as another reparations ballot. Reparations initiative that was trying to be put on the ballot, but now it morphed into proposal S. Boy. Anyways, proposal S almost didn't get on the ballot in the first place. Is thereby a judge's order. The Detroit Election Commission on August 18th ruled that the People's Voice referendum petition legally deficient and took 6 days to notify Perkins, despite the fact that his group had properly submitted signatures according to Perkins and the documents he sent to Cranes. So he sued the commission and the city clerk, Janice Winfrey. We all know how much we love Janice Winfrey. On August 27th, seeking reinstatement on the ballot. The commission argued that proposal S language would be unclear to voters and that the People's Voice didn't have all of its documentation in order, according to the lawsuit and the defense's response. The two sides also differed on whether it was too late to change the ballot. Wow. Anyways, Perkins agrees that the Detroit Election Commission wrongly denied the ballot initiative, delayed the process, and lied about the validity of petition documents in court in order to keep it off the ballot. They don't want people to vote on certain things. They want to determine what you have the right to vote on. Okay, anyways. Reparations considered. At the center of proposal S and R is whether Detroit will act on a long-standing question of reparations or government restitution for historical injustices against African Americans. Then we talk about Evanston, Illinois is the first city in the United States so far to fund reparations and plans to give up to $25,000.
Propaganda, bro.
Towards housing for eligible residents, according to ABC News. It is an attempt to acknowledge harm caused to African Americans. Okay, I'm not going to get into all of that, man. We'll talk about that because I want to get Ramon up here quick. In Detroit, reparations were under discussion. However, they're still far from being implemented. Sheffield's reparations proposal would, as worded on the ballot, establish a reparations task force to make recommendations for housing and economic development programs that address historical discrimination against the Black community in Detroit. So obviously, just took that straight off of the ballot. Sheffield did not respond to a request for her comment on her stance on proposal S. I'm sure because there's political pressure.
That's where the pushback gonna come.
Yeah, well, because they already know. So we can bring, okay. So I think I'm covering it up. This is about the end of the article. Okay, so proposal S is related to, okay. Sheffield did not respond on proposal S in relation to reparations. I think we have a democracy. At this point, voters should have the ability to vote on appropriating funds. This is Denzel.
Speak up a little bit, Gerard. I can barely hear you.
You can't hear me?
Yeah, your voice was low. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So this is the man who's running for Denzel McCampbell. This is his quote on proposal S in relation to reparations. I think we have a democracy, and at this point, voters should have the ability to vote on appropriating funds, said Denzel McCampbell. He's running for against Janice Winfrey for the clerk's office. That's very sad that you would say that, sir. I think that it's something that this is key on various issues, not just reparations. If you think about affordable housing, transportation, the clerk candidate also drew on a connection to proposal P, when I think about why Proposal P came out and Proposal P, I think it shows there's a gap in what voters want in the city and what they're seeing from their elected officials. McCampbell said, as I talk to people time and time again, they're frustrated in the lack of progress they're seeing, and this could be a way. They're saying we need a route where our voices will be heard. Okay. All right.
And
you want to bring up Ramon, man, into this, so we can talk about the history of what we know of about this proposal.
Go ahead and talk about this. Ramon stepped off for a second. So when
I was just going to say, just to give folks a quick recap of Proposal P. Again, it was to revise the current Detroit charter, and it seek to change. I'm reading it, directly from bridgedetroit.com, but it says revised charter seek to change. It seeks more than 100 changes to address everything from crumbling sidewalks, water shutoffs, and a citywide recycling program to affordable housing measures, immigration rights, and city contract procedures. At times, it called for singular demands such as a monument to former Detroit Mayor Coleman Young, and at other times, reaches for broad reform in immigration and police training. It would have created 47 new elected positions and 102 new appointed positions. So, to that comment that Gerard made about the disconnect between the citizens and the politicians, I think it says it all there. And so I think a lot of Detroiters were worried about Proposal P in the simple sense that it wasn't going to solve the issues that they're currently facing. So
yes,
that, and it was, But anyways, let's not delve deep into it. Go ahead, Steph.
It was too broad for me, bro. We wanted to do too much unrealistically. And at the end of the day, the city of Detroit, the people of Detroit, a lot of those, I don't know about any kind of immigration, nothing for Detroit. That's not really the issue that I think needs to be addressed at the city level. It's 80% black, and we did the stats before. Only about 5% of Michigan residents are black born in another country. So that's 5% of total immigrants, not 5% of total people. And so
what Stedman is talking to is that what Stedman is talking to is that one of the things of Proposal P was to create an Office of Immigration, I believe, wasn't it, an office or department?
Prop P.
Yeah, something like that.
Actually, yeah. And that's what he's speaking to. But there was no such thing of that for our lineage outside of this reparations task force that was also included in Proposal P.
The crazy thing is the office still exists at the state level, Office of Global Michigan. So they was probably trying to work something out at the city level.
Now, just correct me. Prop R, the committee members would have been selected by city council and the mayor?
It's safe to assume that based on the broad language that Gerard showed.
I don't know because
we couldn't get any conclusive. When we went to that event, we couldn't get any conclusive determination one way or the other who appointed what to the board or whatever, which is also a problem when it comes to accountability, and we've talked about that when we talked about Proposal P.
So we're gonna make this
because the Proposal P actually laid out the actual mechanisms to how this task force would be created if the charter had been passed, as Proposal P had been passed. It talked about the mayor was going to appoint with the city council actually confirming, right? Kind of like how the president does with the Supreme Court or for federal judges, right? Like you have the mayor would have appointed, and then the city council would have gave an up and down vote or what have you. There's no mechanism tied to what we covered, right? We read that Proposal R. They did not talk about the mechanism of how committee members would be chosen. How many were going to be on the committee? Didn't say it was going to be 5, 7, 8, 9. None of that was illustrated. So I believe like all that language would have to come after it's been passed. Then maybe it would come. But as of right now, I don't see anything in regards to that. It just said voter supported. What does that mean? It didn't say voter elected. Now, if it said voter elected, then I'll be like, okay, cool, we got a shot at this, because that means that we can, run people, who possibly could, get on the commission that has a good idea of what reparations should look like. And this is not reparations, and for what first and foremost, where we could steer, where it would make sense where to steer the commission in the right manner of how the local reparations committee work should be done. But it's just too vague. But anyways, go ahead, brother. You got this.
So I would just say this. So on the screen, I did put up the two options, quote unquote. Right. It does go more towards the more constrictive side of saying that the committee is selected by city council and mayor. And the only reason I say that is because if you don't put out clarity to assure people that this will be a transparent process, like seriously, then we're going to assume that you're going to violate it because there's not a good track record, especially from Detroit City Council, right? So go ahead, Seven.
Well, that was one of the things I was going to say. We have 5 members of council right now being investigated by the FBI or having been, and so we're going to allow those people to make determinations on who should be put on any kind of positions. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and appropriating funding.
Appropriating funding without for anything, without any kind of oversight or restrictions. Like that's the problem with all the bid rigging and all these contract rigging. Like that's what they're all in trouble for. Something as simple as dumping waste, they're being investigated for, and you want us to be able to say, you know what? We trust those in charge. We trust the system of governance that we have to allow only those things which would be beneficial and that a majority of Detroit citizens will want to have funds appropriated toward them. I mean, you be funding somebody's weed grow operation. You know what I'm saying?
Right. You don't know what's going to happen with that. So let's do this. We got to get pivoted into our big topic of the day. So anybody who wandered off because we haven't gotten into the ADOS and Freedmen discussion yet, hang tight. We're about to get out of what we're talking about. But it's important from the Detroit standpoint that we understand, right, that this isn't the end of this when you put this on the ballot. This is the beginning of a slippery slope. If you let a proposition where citizens are just reappropriating money. I'm not saying that people can't make smart decisions, but when you make it that open and broad with no real checks and balances to be said of up front, it could turn into who can psychologically manipulate most of the public the quickest.
I mean,
basically.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say putting it in yes, no format. Like, do you want to support this or do you want to oppose it? And that'll get folks to vote for all sort of things, Darville, like to what you're saying. So. Yeah,
I mean, and just okay. So there's many people that were for proposal, was for proposal P, and what we've seen and other initiatives that were very strongly in favor of creating more power towards the people and basically channeling the power outside of city council, outside of the mayor, because that was one of the big issues why the Duggan administration didn't like it, why they don't like this proposal less as well, because you kind of like taking some of their power and discretion out of their offices. But here's the thing though, so an example, right? So the proponents for proposal P there were a lot, but they didn't have the money, right, to really counter the narrative that the mayor had, right? The same going back to the community's benefit agreement, right? There was 2 proposals, proposal A and proposal B. Okay, one was being championed by Scott Benson, who's now under federal investigation, right? And the other was being done by another group that was much, it was much more. This community benefits agreement was much more closer to what like a residents will want. It was much more. It was harder towards business, whereas the one that was championed by Scott Benson was more friendlier to business. Just to make it simple, right? Again, what ended up happening? Those with the money interest in the city and in this area was able to flood the radio, billboards, had people had unions actually saying, hey, if you vote for the other option, it's going to take away our jobs, things that were kind of materially not factual, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, that is what gets people's attention, unfortunately. Right. And you don't have the counter narrative. You don't have a space where equal things are allowed to compete on its own merit. You have a skewing of the truth, maybe not outright lies, but a skewing of it to where, it's not really being authentic to what it is. And because the money interests are there, then now they're swaying the public opinion where they actually are voting against stuff that's in their own interest because they've been told this because most people, only look at, ads or, hey, this editor from this paper said so, or, this particular, maybe, this particular church member or reverend or whatever, right, who's sold into the people, go with it or what have you. So it just, you understand, if we do this proposal S, man, we are opening it up. We are opening it up to this type of stuff happening well beyond reparations. As anything, who's to say that somebody said, someone from, some big money interest contractor or whatever out of town wants to create an initiative that, gives preferential treatment to, contractors or whatever, right? Out of town contractors. Who's to say, and then they'll convince the people that, hey, this is actually a good thing versus a bad thing, right? And then it gets passed, and now we have money going towards something that's not really for the people. And unfortunately, we have such a low voter turnout rate.
11%, bro.
11%. These things get passed by a small margin. It doesn't. It was crazy that I saw the totals that voted, dug in back into, in this primary. Yeah. I'm sorry, in the primary, like he had over 30,000 something votes.
Yeah, and you look at
the next challenger, Anthony Adams, only had 7,000. You know what I'm saying? 30,000. So it's like, wow, dude, it's a bunch of people, but they're getting conned.
All right.
Anyways, go ahead.
No, you're right, Stedman. Go ahead and hit it real quick. Ernest, you can close us out. We got to pop off.
Well, I was going to say, when you look at Detroit as a city of 600,000 people, so 11% is roughly 60,000. I mean, that's what it took. So if he got 30,000 votes, he got 50% of votes. He got 50% of the votes. And that, I mean, we've talked about it. That's Indian Village. That's Sherwood Forest. That's Outer Drive, East Outer Drive, West Outer Drive. So they're very small areas, but he does that. If you look up East Jefferson, it's all nicely fixed. The road is paved, bike lanes painted. They just repaved Jefferson. So he's doing what he has to do to make it seem like, oh, Detroit is nice. Everything is great. Until you go up in the neighborhoods and see the potholes, you know what I'm saying? And dilapidated houses and buildings. And so, I mean, it's propaganda. I talked about it last show. It's a running conversation for this show. Propaganda all around.
Aaron, you got anything?
No, yeah, definitely. Just only thing I got to say is, we want to warn the folks about the propaganda. In the article Gerard was reading, they mentioned Evanston, Illinois, and how they're giving $25,000 to every Black family. The reality is $25,000 is going out to 16 Black families, up to $400,000 out of the $10 million that they got from revenue in marijuana sales. So we'll let you guys have that truth, and we could definitely transition into the next.
Here's another. Before we do that, man, we just got to. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, don't call it reparations. At the end of the day, when you have to, these tax dollars, the people pay for, right? Us as residents, these are our tax dollars that we pay through sales tax, through property tax, through so on and so forth, that get returned back to us by the state, right? And these are appropriated for Detroit. We cannot call that reparations. We can't be paying our own reparations to ourselves and be repaired. That'll be like, someone damages my car, and I, my insurance fixes my car, right? But the person who damaged my car never fixes it. But they say, well, hey, your insurance paid for your car to get fixed. You should be good. No, you still owe me. You know what I'm saying? You still owe for the damage.
Gerard, it's like your insurance company going in your bank account to fix your car.
Right. Exactly. You're right. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Can we take some money from your account and we give it back to you?
Not can you. You want to agree to it? Man.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Exactly. So people, listen, let me just make sure everybody on the line understands we are very clear about what reparations are and what they are not, okay? I'm going to hit you with this hit, and then we're going to go into this ADOS Freedmen thing. Reparations are a comprehensive set of programs which serve reparative justice, fundamentally addressing the socioeconomic disparities at the root of most problems plaguing the Black community today. These disparities include wealth, psychological traumas, environmental deficiencies, education, and anti-Black discrimination. The recipients of such reparations are a very specific group that is identified just as specific as you would do in a legal court case. And in order to do any of this, we're talking about things like lineage therapy, protected citizenship class, neighborhood and infrastructure restoration, cash compensation for the wealth that was stolen, cash restitution as punitive damages for the harm that was done, mandatory historical education, not only for us, but for the entire country, a government contract guarantees for the left outs that we had throughout this entire time, our HBCUs, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, the endowment funding for our actual historically Black colleges and universities, national acknowledgement coming from the chief executive officer of this country, the president and Congress, signed in blood. We're not playing. This isn't from a committee. And then federally mandated training. This bill, however, is paid by the citizens and public-private corporations because everyone except us is benefiting from the oppression that we have undergone. This is not something you can get out of the budget of the city of Detroit. This is not something you can get out of the budget for the state of Michigan. This has to come straight out of the treasury. Just like they made money up for Corona, got to make this up. I hate to say it like that, but you got to understand that this bill is not a small bill. But it ain't, hey, listen, I put it this way. Some people are like, that's too much money or whatever. Some folks who don't understand the math. We've already had Sandy Darity and other economists do this work. But if you really think that this is going to bankrupt the country, then think about it. Maybe the country shouldn't even exist. Like if this country was built off of us and is profited off of our bodies, our lineage, our family so much that today to pay us back for what was done to us will ruin this country, then your country should have never gotten here to begin with. That means you need to accept the reality of what's going to happen if reparations are handed out properly. But we are not going to rest until they are handed out properly. So that's what this is about. So
and here's the thing, before we scare everybody with that, listen, listen. The economy will not fall to the bottom. Okay, we're talking about 12 to 17 trillion over a set of 20 something years, right? We just got out of Afghanistan, correct? And they said that was about $3 trillion over 20 something years. That was 3 trillion, okay, over 20 something years. Did you not? Did you not, people not going to work? Were people still not buying stuff? Were people still able to get loans? Were people, you know what I'm saying? We are a sovereign, monetary sovereign government. We can just create money out of thin air. Really, for real. The only real issue that can occur when these type of monetary policies are instituted is inflation. Now that's a possibility. But we haven't seen inflations, honestly, we've had low inflation. The government with monetary easing, I'm sorry, what was it? Obama's it was quantitative easing, right? When, after 2008, right, we were constantly, the Treasury, not Treasury, but the Federal Reserve was constantly throwing money out, for the banks to loan out. And guess what they did? Most of the time they didn't loan out any of it. They kept it. They gave their CEOs government parachutes, so on and so forth. The economy wasn't even moving. Okay. So, it wasn't even moving. But before we go, I got to talk about it to people, I don't want anybody to understand. I'll be real quick on it. I promise. At the end of the day, it's not going to bankrupt us, guys. That's the whole point that I'm trying to say. Okay. It's not going to bankrupt us.
Yeah, I was going to say we asking for research and development, and to segue into our next topic, who gets that research and development, or who gets that R&D investment from this corporation or the government, specifically related to the claim that we're talking about? You guys want to jump on that, Stead or Darville?
I mean, listen, this is how I want us to enter into this. Gerard, you want to kind of explain kind of what you've seen boiling off, or you and Ernest, or if you've seen it also, kind of the discussions that have happened in some of the social media spheres, and then we got to get into the context of each of the definitions. Like, what started happening? Did somebody start a conversation or something? What was going on? What's the backstory to this whole discussion of Freedmen and ADOS and so on and so forth?
Okay. So ultimately, God, okay, where do we start? Well, I will say this. There was those of you who may or may not know, there was a kind of a split,
a schism,
right? A schism that occurred in the reparations, the ADOS reparations movement. And the best way, I could say it is that, people, the founders of the ADOS term, Yvette Carnell, Antonio Moore, they had a certain vision of how they wanted to see the reparations movement done.
Mm-hmm.
And there was those who were on the ground who had created chapters, who had already started, kind of saw a different way.
Ramon, are you there? I'll see when he comes up. I seen he had come in and I missed him. I apologize. So
he's saying he's having problems right now. I told him to
call in.
Go ahead and call in, and then he's saying that his plan is telling him that he doesn't have the ability to. It's not part of his. He said, "My brother, the saying the call is not in his rate plan." So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's a good one.
I don't know if it's a matter of. It's a long distance call, right? It's 425, but so I don't know. Hopefully,
right, so go ahead, Gerard.
Okay, so there was, and it got to the point, and Darvell's going to actually go into as far, later on, he's going to release something talking about our actual chapter. So I'm president. So full disclosure, I'm president of the Freedmen Agenda League of Michigan. Darvell is the secretary. Stedman, you're the political outreach, and Ernest is on the treasury and other committees as well. We were the ADOS Detroit group, and there was a schism within our group about, we were getting told what words we could and could not use. Like, for instance, there was the brothers from Be the Power, and those were saying, hey, I am a reparationist, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we were being discouraged and told that we were off cold by using the word reparationist versus just using ADOS. We were told that, there was many different things like, hey, if you follow these type of people, they're off cold, they're wrong, they're this, they're that, and from what we could tell, that these brothers were sincere from Be the Power, and also, you got Freeman without the D.
Hey, this is a small operation. We're doing all this in house.
Yeah,
I got no trust fund money, so
real time.
We Freeman over here.
Darvell's our host, our producer, everything.
Right, he's
all
a man of many hats,
he's controlling the mics and all the screens and everything. So you have also, I forget, talk about B1 and FBA.
Yeah.
That was a schism between Tariq Nasheed and his followers. Ultimately, there was a schism between Antonio Moore and them over language. As far as, I believe, Tariq Nasheed was actually, I had posted something I was kind of in support of some Republican policies. He was rebuked publicly, and there, he took offense to it. And then he separated himself and his members from the ADOS movement through a whole bunch of ad hominem attacks against Yvette Carnell, Antonio Moore, so on and so forth. So that was a schism. And then there was the Be the Power BTP schism that happened, and the Tamari Sheila Johnson schism. It was a bunch of different schisms. Ultimately,
a lot of disputes, inner disputes
that occurred. Like I said, even in our chapter, ADOS Detroit chapter, you're looking at 4 of the original, members of out of probably 10 or 11 of the original hardcore members of the ADOS Detroit chapter, and ultimately we want to either way. So there was those of us that went ahead and decided to say, okay, we're going to, we believe in this movement and we don't want to cult follow or what have you, and so. We decided we still want to carry on. And then we were thinking, okay, what is a name that's more appropriate? Because there also, not only there was issues within, there was issues without, right? We were getting attacked by the Pan-Africanists. We were getting attacked by celebrity members. We were getting attacked, it was all, everyone was attacking.
Shields.
Everything, Shields, everyone's attacking.
And what we're talking about ADOS was catching this heat, right?
Right.
ADOS was catching this heat because ADOS was leading the forefront. Like you said, what is it? We give credit where credit is due. Right. ADOS is which caused the resurgence of the reparations movement. and they have caught such hell that it has negative connotation almost at this point. And the media apparatus, the white controlled media apparatus, has done a damn good job at even taking Yvette's interviews and turning them upside down.
Right. But one of the things that was a legitimate criticism was that, you know, for the acronym, it's an acronym, right? The American descendants of slavery versus slave, right? Because when slave was, that one had a negative connotation. Most of our people didn't want to accept that. So then it was like, no. So I believe, you know, again, I can't speak in somebody's mind, but I believe the pivot from slaves to slavery was more, you know, so it could be more palatable, you know, more digestible for our people.
Bernice King.
Yes.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but Bernice King, Martin Luther King's daughter, actually said something about it on Twitter once. She said something like, I'm not a descendant of slaves. My people weren't slaves. They were something, you know, slavery was an institution. And it's just like unnecessary. People were getting unnecessarily hung up on semantics instead of understanding that the ultimate objective of the organization was justice through reparations.
Right. The reparations for those who descend from those who went through American chattel slavery. Okay.
Correct.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead, Gerard.
So let me focus on that slavery part. So with that being said, so now we went from slaves to slavery as the S being the last word of the acronym. Okay. Now you get, okay, well, how can you now? So then we were, you know, brought up, which was, but other Pan-Africans were saying, well, hey, look, this is supposed to be a lineage, because this was supposed to, like, you know, the way this was originally rolled out was that we're supposed to use ADOS in lieu of using Black or African American or any of the previous nomers, right? You know, because now, you know, Blackness is all flat. African American is not a good term because it's all flat. We're talking about, that's including, you know, Black immigrants. We want to disaggregate ourselves out to those who descend from those from American chattel slavery. Okay. They're saying, well, hey, if that's supposed to be a lineage title, you can't descend from an institution. You know, people descend from people, but not from institutions, right? You don't descend from the Bank of America or a bank or the Fed, you know, or, you know, any or the IRS or the FBI. You can't descend from that. You could be a part of it, but you can't descend from it, which is a valid argument. As well as, if you think about the institution itself, as multiple components that make up the institution. So you will be talking about the slave masters, you'll be talking about the overseers, you'll be talking about the slave catchers, you'll be talking about everyone that's involved in the institution of slavery. And, you know, because they could be also a descendant of it. And if I'm a descendant of somebody, you know, I mean, shit, Black people, we can have both sides, right? You could be descendant, you could actually have, you know, overseer blood in you, which I believe I have, you know what I'm saying, as well as slave, you know what I mean, Black slave as well, right? Right. So now you're already getting the pressure and the attack from every which way, trying to tear this apart at all different angles and seams, right? So it became appropriate. It occurred to me because my whole thing was that, hey, you know, and that's why I was asking the brothers, when did we go talk to the Warren campaign? Because this is when I actually brought it up with Darvell and brought it up with Stedman. We didn't know Ernest at the time. And I gave them my idea. I said, you know, I think we need to use Freedmen because it's a historical. It has a historical connotation to it. It's a lineage. Historical connotation. It's historical. There's a precedence. You know, I knew of the word based on the Freedmen's Bureau, that institution that was that was brought about by legislation through Congress. You know what I'm saying? There's already, the legal claim is already there with the government as freedmen. You know, there was the Freedmen Acts that were put into place. You know, ultimately we can say, hey, look, we're the descendants of those folks, and what the government had provided and instituted did not finish. So now you need to finish with the rest of us. So that's where our claim is. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel and create a new term. This term already exists on the books. It's already there. It makes sense. We should use freedmen. Now, of course, my brother's like, okay, nah.
So let me pause.
Go ahead.
Stop. So we need to square this up, get people square back up. So what Gerard he explained the history of kind of where ADOS Detroit came from in terms of being a free collective of individuals who came together under the movement of the American Descendants of Slavery, which was a term, ADOS, coined by Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. We made this chapter, and we had some thoughts about, well, ADOS, as many other people had critically or have been critical of, ADOS as slavery, it doesn't necessarily make all that much sense. Like, how do you descend from slavery as an institution, right? So that's ADOS, right? And then there are many variations that came. We started talking about the Freedmen and all these other things, right, Gerard? So the discussion that occurred over the weekend that sparked the debate, though.
Yeah, so the one that started, okay, we're gonna get back to that. Well, recently. So simultaneously, this okay. So me and the brothers that came up with using the word Freedmen, I started clinging to that. Then BTP as well because the brothers at BTP, brother Naheem, Josh, brother Ali, brother Logic, right? Those are the members of BTP, Be the Power. Okay, they had came into this space. They had gotten to their issues with Yvette Carnell, Antonio Moore. They split, and so again, and also as well, there was kind of a clamping down on the word ADOS. Now, Yvette Carnell, they were clamping down on it. They were saying, hey, look, we started ADOS. We started ADOS or what have you. You basically had to be with their code, or you're not. If you're not with us, you're out. So on and so forth. So it's like we still don't want to give up the movement, because the movement isn't just one person or one group of people, right? You know what I mean? So we went into Freedmen, and quite naturally that they came up with Freedmen. So now they started picking up the F1 moniker, right? You can add that one to the mix, man. F1.
What?
Yeah. They have F1 shirts and everything, man. Freedmen first. Right?
Yeah, Darvell.
Black first.
Got to get caught up, Darvell.
Yeah. Darvell ain't in he ain't in the YouTube streets. He ain't in the YouTube streets and Twitter streets. That man's an engineer. He's pretty busy, man.
All right, so square this one up. So,
right.
Listen, we had ADOS. Then we realized there's an issue with it. But the big thing about it, and I'll go into it in my separate video. You guys will see it on YouTube and Facebook in a day or two. Yvette and Antonio wanted to restrict the usage of the term. That was a retraction from kind of what other people had understood it to be. You may have seen my video on YouTube where I described very clearly that ADOS, or American Descendants of Slavery, was 2 in 1. It was a identity and it was also a movement. They wanted to take those and restrict you being able to use that word ADOS. If they want to restrict that such that if you weren't part of the movement, ADOS, under their direction explicitly, you could not use the term ADOS. So they basically copyrighted it and locked it down. I understand why, because there were issues with Black Lives Matter, where all these defunct and unrepresentative chapters and individuals claiming to represent the movement using that terminology were running around doing things that were in contradiction to the actual spirit of Black Lives Matter. They painted such a great picture of what not to do with Black Lives Matter. As you've seen, people came back and tried to take back control of Black Lives Matter, and that was a whole kerfuffle about a bunch of money, and we talked about that. We had an episode about that. But now they're trying to clamp down to ADOS, but people are not liking how this clamping down was going on, right? Things are being constricted and restricted. Entire chapters were kind of being axed. That's a whole discussion. So things were getting a little fragile and unpredictable. So people picked the Freedmen.
And I'll add that there's a melting pot of things that got us to this point, like to what Gerard and Darvell was speaking on. But we could also mention the fact that, be it B1, F1, ADOS, Freedmen, all of these groups are reparationist groups in a source, meaning that they support and advocate for reparations for a specific ethnic group. Now, what is this ethnic group called? That's a point of contention, and a lot of folks, it caused controversy arguing this is why we should use this one versus this one. But again, the reality is same fight, just different name. But to what Gerard mentioned earlier, ton of factions, ton of splits, ton of schisms, different personality traits, folks going off in different lanes. And here we are today, essentially with, I would add, because Darvell, you guys are familiar with F1, Freedmen. Then we got ADOS. Then we got B1 and FBA, which is a part of the same group. But we also got the Aboriginal and Indigenous group that's popping up. Now, all of these groups is related to the lineage of the Black Americans who can tie back to that timeline. Literally meaning every one of these groups can go and pull up some censuses if they wanted to. We can all get to the 1800s.
Yo,
that's the thing.
You said it right. Like at the end of the day, they're all talking about the same distinct group of people.
Yes.
With some variation, but for real, what they're really saying is that they're not. Again, we love all of our Black brothers and sisters. I'm welcoming. I got people from everywhere in my life, and I love them. But what they're saying when we come up with this distinction is we're building ADOS and Freedmen and B1 and the F1 and the FBA and all these groups we're going to go through. They built the specificity identifier required to actually have a sound case for reparations that is based on the endured and accrued disadvantage that these people went through from 1619 all the way through past the 60s. So you can't be a descendant or a Black immigrant, a descendant of Black immigrants or a Black immigrant and lay claim to the same case. That is not to say they didn't undergo any racism, any type of oppression or anything like that once they got here. But this case that we're talking about really started before they even got here. This is a totally different case, and it covers 90% of Black America. And when you can fix or uplift 90% of Black America, you can't never tell me the other 10% aren't going to be better off from that. Matter of fact, the other 10% is only here because the original 90% fought so hard to get to where we are today.
Yeah, we always say, in which we got the stat from, again, with Antonio Moore presented it to us. But, numbers are numbers, man. No one owns research. But basically, Black immigration was right of the decimal point, pre 1965. It wasn't until the Immigration Reform Bill of 1965 or Act of 1965 did we start seeing, in any large numbers or significant numbers, African immigrants coming to this country from, African immigrants or Caribbeans. They were a small number. Yeah, maybe not now in certain areas, like for instance, New York and Harlem, right? There was a more abundance of Caribbeans, in particular portions of the country, but throughout the rest of the South and where most of our people are from, and in other cities like Chicago and New York, which are havens of Black cities, Baltimore, so on. What I'm saying? It's just small minute numbers or what have you. You really didn't start seeing really a more influx until like the 70s, 80s, 90s. Right. You start seeing these higher numbers coming or whatever, whether it be through, the Somalians that came, through there, Ethiopian Somalians coming through because of, refugee, issues that happened in Africa, so on and so forth. There was a report of Haitian nurses back in the 70s, you know what I'm saying? Like these different government programs that were actually, and incidents that were happening throughout the world that was bringing people in.
Right. So two things. So what we got to do is again, we haven't explained why this comes up now. Why is this show coming up today? The show is coming up, and correct me, Ernest, if I get it wrong. Basically, we know that California has been blazing the trail over the past year in their movement towards state level reparations studies. They have AB 3121 on the books. They have a commission currently in session that is doing the study and homework to build the case. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Former ADOS chapters, former, I always say, current reparation is still doing all the work out there in California.
Right. And so the focus has always been on the work. And what got the kerfuffles going back in the day is that we didn't care. Many people didn't care what your name was. As long as you were doing the same work as what other people were doing, it didn't matter if it was B1, FBA, Jimmy Johns, or Pocahontas. Get in here and get the work done. Now, because they are working so hard and making so much progress in California, they had a call to action they were trying to organize over the past couple of days. They needed people to call in to a certain session of this task force and continue to push the same nomenclature they started the task force with. That was ADOS. Is that incorrect or is that correct?
It's incorrect. And the reason why is because we can't just say it like it's all of the current organizations that we're aware of in California that had that call to action. It's more so like grassroots folks got together, and those who identified as ADOS were like, this is what we're going to run with no matter what. So if somebody come and say Freedmen and FBA, we shutting them out because we already agreed that ADOS is the term we using for our call to action for our work. And that's that's where you get into this kerfuffle, Darville. It's like if somebody come in and say Freedmen and they mean the same exact thing, why would you get so pissed off?
And then also
you know what I'm saying?
as well as Be the Power had on their channel for the last week or so. And plus they went ahead and reviewed they did a book review of the Bloody Shirt. They had a couple of different I think they had a 2-part episode or 2-part presentation on why freedmen should be what we use versus anything else, right? So the pro freedmen, I would say, is Be the Power, right? And they also are organized under the United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen. They have an organization that they went and created prior to actually the whole split. They had created prior to the split, but they went ahead and they have a 501c3, and they also are in touch with the many other chapters that were kind of like shut out of the process by Yvette and Tone. So they have been the loudest champions of using the word freedmen. And so again, this is being reverberated, and then also they also are on Twitter and other spaces as well, combating those that are pushing back against using against using the word freedom or using freedman. I'm sorry, not freedom, freedman. So they had a clubhouse and they did a clubhouse session on Sunday, and then in return, I ended up getting, for whatever reason, I was part of that. I got to speak, and then in return. It was some ADOS affiliated people did a clubhouse and rebuking the term freedman, right, and causing a bunch of confusion.
So we got a fight on Clubhouse over ADOS freedmen.
Yeah, exactly. So I shared the link with Lord Abba, awesome brother Naeem, and then he came to that chat and he brought the smoke. You know what I mean, to say like, how can you refute the word freedman, and where is this being how can you is historically in place? This is what our people were called. This is what our people were calling ourselves. You know what I'm saying? The freedman, that's what Frederick Douglass, they actually brought up a documentation showing where Frederick Douglass in his own handwriting had written a speech called The Freedman. Right. You know what I mean?
So we know now how this all plays out. So let's run through some terminology for the people, right? Let's get everyone the full scope, at least as I had it up to this show. But my man's Ernest had like 15 other terms to throw on the plate as well. And I missed some of them. I apologize. I didn't know. Okay. So let's hit him with some stuff. First one off the bus, ADOS. And I might have the year wrong. Y'all can shoot at me later. ADOS. 2018, I think it was before then, but I mean, really coming into popularity at least 2018.
Yeah,
American descendants of slavery. This is describing the progenies of Africans who were formerly enslaved on the land which would become the United States of America, or within the United States of America. Slavery continued past wherever we think it stopped, believe me. So that's ADOS. Then there was this term ADOS, right? People came in, just like Gerard said, there was a lot of sound criticism against ADOS, and so people wanted to add chattel slavery in there because there was people running around saying, well, I was a slave in this country or that country or that country. So we had to do chattel slavery because that was very specific to this region, and American descendants of chattel slavery became a terminology, right? ADOS. Then we had FBA. That's what, foundational Black Americans. Term, again, referencing to the same population as ADOS, but coined by Tariq Nasheed. Did I get any of that wrong so far?
You good. You're looking good to me, man.
He's been saying that term for a long time. I don't know if it was 2019 or earlier, but essentially, yes, the same.
No, go ahead.
B1.
Yeah, I was going to just add B1 and FBA. They kind of running the same.
But I would say B1. The first time I heard B1 was Dr. What's his name?
Black Truth or Jason Black?
No. Yep. B1, Dr. Professor Black. Yeah, him and
Black Authority.
Black Authority. Yeah, they were yelling B1 as well as
What's so crazy about that is that this stuff, this conflict we were talking about that led to all this splintering. They even pulled them into it, and these folks don't even have faces.
Yeah.
It was bad.
Professor Black,
B1. Black first, ideology, not only an identity, but also an ideology of putting Black empowerment, justice, and unity first before being concerned with external groups. Then, who else came after that? Oh, not necessarily after that, but before that were the freedmen. And this is where we talk about the historical reverence of the freedmen term, all the way back from the 1865. The formerly enslaved Black Americans who were formerly enslaved Black American slaves who were enslaved in America. It's very specific that it's written this way because people can try to use anything they will, and we've seen it all the way up until the freedmen started becoming popular in this movement, where folks will say, if you weren't a slave, if you were a slave in a different country, then I might be a freedman because I'm free today, or I'm a descendant of freedmen of Brazilian slaves or something like that. So we understand freedmen strictly because it is written, right? Just like Gerard talked about, the history is very strong and very sound. And freedman is a perfect term. And therefore, the descendants of freedmen is an even perfect term, right?
Right.
Now, African-American, just to kind of close this up with some terms that people know more in contemporary Black America. African-American, around 1980, this came into play. It is description of the ethnic group of Americans with partial or total ancestry from any of Black racial groups of Africa. So you can be African-American, you might think you're talking about ADOS people, but technically it doesn't define it that specifically, right?
And technically the government doesn't define it that way. That's more importantly, the federal government doesn't.
Because I was going to say white South Africans, they African-Americans, Darville. You know? if they come over,
that's what happens, see? I'm damn Black, just the term Black. It came in the 1600s, really. It's a socially constructed racial classification of people based on skin color, right? It's used globally at this point, right? But it's not usually used within African countries with no history or very little history of colonial racial segregation or significant white population. Gerard, am I wrong on that?
I don't think so, but I think you're pretty right, man. Yeah.
Cynthia in the chat said African American was used in the 1780s.
Oh wow!
I heard that before. Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
Prince Hall or some guys. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not to what it was not in the connotation that it uses today. You know what I'm saying? Right. But even so, they were referring to what we would call ADOS people or freedmen. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, that's who they're referring to. But as today in contemporary times, an African American can be an African who was a second generation, first generation. In fact, they be like, I'm more African than you are. You know what I mean? So, we've had this with this back and forth with our African diasporan brothers, all the terms. That's why we needed a term to disaggregate ourselves.
For our older viewers out there, some other terms we missed: Negro, color, mulatto. And it's on there, you guys should understand where that comes from. So,
hey, check this out now. Check this out now. Yeah. My grandmother, on my mother's side, right? My mother's mother, right? They were classified as mulattoes, okay? And that term actually, you can actually go back in the census and look at it, like in the 1920s, 30s, and eventually they got rid of mulatto as being an actual racial category. The Office of Management and Budget, they are the ones who determine what all the racial categories are. The Brother Ali always spits it out on the BTP, the actual directive or what have you. They actually list all the different racial categories and groups. But mulatto, like you said, was an actual term. And you know what? She did not consider herself Black. She's like, I ain't Black. My mother, you know what I'm saying? My mother used to say, well, you got Black kids. I don't mean shit. She ain't Black. You know what I mean? So, that goes into the whole colorism thing, right? But nonetheless, like that was a concept. You had a B and you had an M. Those were literally, you can look at the freaking census records, you will actually find that for those who were of mixed race or fell in the mulatto race or what have you. And they thought of themselves as separate, just like how the colored do in South Africa today. They think of themselves separate from Blacks. They don't consider themselves Blacks. So, this country is it's a mixed bag, man, because of this white supremacy that was spread all across the world. It's confused a lot of people.
What else confuses a lot of people? The last couple of terms we're going to touch on, and you guys can go in on these, right? Unfortunately, people are getting confused in the Black community by people of color.
Right.
They think we people of color.
Man.
Well, the crazy part is, historically, you can find like tapes or readings. Like I think Du Bois even mentions people of color in one of the speeches of his that I listened to. But I think, you look at NAACP, the name colored people, but I feel like that was just. But that was it was meant towards us, but I feel like that was just a polite way of saying niggers. You know what I mean? Like because that was what they was calling you. That was no, they was calling you monkeys and shit any other time. So this was our way of at least saying like, no, we're colored people, like we're people of color, like to try to clean that up because they wasn't really concerned with what you saw yourself as. They was calling you whatever they felt like because they could. Yeah. And so but using it today is all getting turned on you now as a catch-all phrase.
Yeah.
It's funny enough as to speak of this. I was literally listening to an interview on NPR. I believe it was the On Point or something like that, and the host was actually interviewing this doctor who had actually had one point in time clerked for a Thurgood Marshall. He's a professor somewhere in one of these fancy colleges or what have you. Wrote many books about race and things of that nature, part of the civil rights movement, things of that nature or what have you. And he literally said, like, because he uses the word Negro, right? And he said one of his students or somebody chastised him, saying, they felt offended that he used the word Negro. And he was like Negro. He said, that's funny. He was like, who told me to use the word Negro was Thurgood Marshall. You know what I'm saying? He was going and he went on and just, all his connections to that lineage. But here is a student probably in their teens, 20s, whatever, who might not even be a descendant of freedmen, right? Doesn't have that connotation. They look at it as a negative word, a negative connotation. And he was like, now it's funny that, and also colored person, right? Like that is passe and considered kind of like, you're off or wrong if you call somebody black colored, right? That's like, that's what old white people who are racist do or don't know any better call a black person colored. But he's like, but yet and still we have people of color being thrown around like it's nobody's business. Like he said, isn't that crazy? Where we've gotten to the point to where Negro is and color is considered like a negative or passe or a negative. It has a negative connotation to it. Yet and still, a person of color, which now doesn't mean exclusively us, is just an accepted term. Is wild.
Yeah. So there's another one though. There are two others. That confuse our people. Unfortunately, BIPOC is the latest. When the latest hotness is.
See, they went and did what people was doing with ADOS and BADOX was on some BIPOC. Added two letters in the front on, so let's be more specific. Black. Indigenous people of color.
Right.
It's people of color with an emphasis on unique oppression of Black and Indigenous people. Like still that it makes any sense to even lump us together in a conversation.
Especially when Indigenous people were our oppressors as well.
Yeah.
But they don't care about that. They just trying to get rid of us. So they don't care.
Well, no, it's just it's a political correctness thing, right? You know what I'm saying?
It's not it. Go ahead, Gerard.
People don't understand the history behind it. You know what I mean? So much so that some of the kickback that we were receiving in these groups were saying, "Oh, well, the freedmen are the ones who are the descendants of the slaves of the 5 civilized nations." They were confusing. They were confused because those Black descendants of the slaves that were part of the 5 quote unquote 5 civilized nations, right? The Chickasaw, you know what I'm saying, the Cherokee, the Seminole. I can't remember.
Blackfoot, I think, right? Yeah, Blackfoot and Creek or something like that.
Yeah, Creek. Anyways, you can look it up. The 5 ones. I don't know.
So they were trying to They were muddying the waters with that.
Yeah, right. Those Blacks, right, who were slaves of those quote unquote 5 civilized nations, right? The ones that fought on the side of the Confederates against the U.S. Those Blacks never. Those freedmen never never let go of the word freeman. They to the day still recognize themselves as freedmen, but they're like Cherokee freedmen, or they're you know what I'm saying?
So like Elizabeth Warren people.
Was that
Elizabeth Warren people?
Right.
All
Right.
right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So would I go as far as to say that BIPOC is an insult to Black people?
Oh yeah.
I would.
So yeah, like,
And it lumps us in with anybody else, man. To me,
Well, but then you lumped us in with our oppressor.
you're right.
so I got this interesting quote to read from White Fragility, and it's related to that people of color term. So in the book, she was basically talking about how white people romanticize the good old days in the racial history in America. And then she said, claiming that the past was socially better than the present is also a hallmark of white supremacy. Consider any period in the past from the perspective of people of color. 246 years of brutal enslavement, the rape of Black women for the pleasure of white men and to produce more enslaved workers, the selling off of Black children, the attempted genocide of the indigenous people, Indian removal acts and reservations, indentured servitude, lynching, and mob violence, sharecropping, Chinese exclusion laws, Japanese American internment, Jim Crow laws of mandatory segregation, Black codes, bans on Black jury service, bans on voting, imprisoning people for unpaid work, medical sterilization and experimentation, employment discrimination, educational discrimination, inferior schools, bias laws and policing practices, redlining and subprime mortgages, mass incarceration, racist media representations, cultural erasures, attacks and mockery, and untold perverted historical accounts. And you can see how this romanticized past is strictly a white construct. Now, I just read off that whole list, and we noticed that only 3 or 4 things were for other groups, but the rest was totally for Black folks. So the usage of the people of color term is a direct attack and offense against Black people, because the only thing that applied to other groups of people was genocide of indigenous people, Indian removal acts, reservations. You got the Chinese exclusion laws and Japanese American internment. Outside of that, we suffered everything else that's on that timeline. And that's the problem with the term people of color.
Exactly. I don't want to hear nobody. And so I've talked to folks, my contemporaries, 30s, late 20s, and I ask them questions about, what terminology they use. And if they talk about people of color, if they talk BIPOC, I'd be like, I already know this person's checked out. Like, they ain't even checked into the right hotel. And I'm just like, this bothers me because there's so many intelligent, smart individuals that I interact with that I really like. This is a good person, but then you see that they're riding this bus. And I'm like, this is the bus that white supremacy built to run us over, and you're on it. So anyway, last term, y'all, minority, 1990 or so, a subgroup of the population with unique social, religious, ethnic, racial, and other characteristics that differ from those in the majority group. I mean, you can claim we're a minority. I mean, technically by definition, but that is not constructive to go into. We know who we are. You know who we are. Don't lump us in with other minorities. It's the same thing as POC, same thing as everything else when you do that. So let's try to keep it straight, right? All right, into that. So at the end of the day, right, the whole big deal here was simply that, the Freedmen versus ADOS versus B1 versus FBA versus the other F1 and what have you terms. It's almost a war of semantics. The idea of who we're pointing to is the same. I understand that one of them has a much stronger prevailing legal basis than any of the others. And some people want to, click up, club up, join together under one of those terminologies. That's fine. But you can never step away and say that freedmen is not the proper term. You can never say that the descendants of freedmen is not the proper term. You can never come into a space where you get to argue against something that's been written in law, that's been written by scholars, and all these things well before your terminology even existed, and say that there's a precedence above and beyond it. It's just that simple, but that does not discredit the efforts, the people, the work, the blood, sweat, and tears, and equity that has gone into those other groups of people in those terms that are pushing for the same exact goal as the Freedmen or as ADOS or B1 or whoever. We know reparations is a very specific claim. We know that our justice is very well defined, and we know that they're doing a very good job at cutting us out of it so we don't get it. And so if we continue to allow ourselves to have these fights over these petty terminologies and things like this, instead of getting on code together, no matter what shirt we're wearing, they will continue to divide and conquer, just like we talk about historically of any group, right? Anything to close it out, Stedman and Gerard?
I'll let you go, Stead.
I don't really have anything. For me, the bigger importance is just making sure you get the work done. I think it is important to delineate, but I mean, among ADOS, FBA, B1, I feel like we should be able to come together to understand that we're fighting for the same objective, which is justice through reparations for whichever group title we prefer to use, understanding that it represents all of us. It represents the descendants of those people who built this country for free. That's how I try to kind of put a bow on it. That's who we're talking about. The descendants of those people who built this country for free. As long as we're working towards justice for those individuals, I'm with you 100%.
Gerard?
Yeah, I can't even say it any better, man. I'm F1 Freedman to the end. That's what I choose to go by. Like I said, going all the way back to when we were first, talking to the Elizabeth Warren campaign, and I just feel like it's the right app. It's the app word or descriptor for our people to use. We're freedmen. It denotes that you came from slavery, because how can you be a freedman if you weren't in bondage? It's a historical reference as well. This is not just. It wasn't the first time it was ever used, but it was. But in the American sense of it, is no different than yes, Mexico and Canada are in North America, but when you say American, you're talking about the United States of America.
Right.
It's one of those. It was one of those type of things, right? Yes, there. You could argue that there's other freedmen and other people were freed in the other parts of the Western Hemisphere by colonial powers or whatever the case may be. But no one was ever making that took that term, but the people that were here in the U.S. So it's just too much precedent, and that's what whenever you're talking about something legally. That's what you need. You need to, whenever there's precedence, you want to jump on that, and you also have to identify, who, if there was harm done, you have to identify those who were harmed. Okay, and we have that. Everything's lining up. So
Sweet. So, all right, y'all, we got pivoted into a couple of segments we got for the day. We've been hitting this really hard. I think everyone understands this whole thing is just nothing, but unfortunately we made it into something. We got to have a spoiler alert though, because we're about to talk about some Dave Chappelle stuff, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Go a little bit funny.
If y'all, if you haven't seen this latest Chappelle, what is this skit? What is this segment called?
It's the closer.
Well, the show's the closer. Yeah,
the closer.
Closing.
Because he's saying this is his last. Well, he's saying this is his last show or his last time he was going to. I don't know if it's his last show or his last special. I don't know if it's his last. Netflix.
Yeah, it's his last special for a while. He said.
But definitely going to be for a while. And he also addressed it was his last time that he was going to get on any type of topic about the LGBTQ trans community.
Ernest, did you have a closer for the FBA Freedmen ADOS thing, man?
No, I was. Only thing I had on that was if you guys watched the Boondocks, they had an episode, Catch a Freedman, talking about the lineage and the history. So funny episode. But yeah, even they use it there. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Funny enough, that surname Freeman comes from that era. There were many black people today that actually have the last name either Freedman or Free Man. You know what I mean? Just like how it was denoted with your character, right, Huey, and so on and so forth, right? You know what I'm saying? That comes from that time frame. You know what I mean? It comes from Reconstruction era. So it's nothing new. Ain't nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
My uncle used to tell me. Yeah, he said, "Boy, is anything that you ever thought of, or you gonna do that somebody hasn't thought of or did just themselves, man?" I was like, "Wow, I was blown away." I was about 13.
Straight up.
I was like, "Damn, for real?" Ain't like nothing you thought of. did.
Who
But anyway,
wants to explain kind of what Chappelle said in his skit, and what's the first thing I should bring up here? I don't know. I think Stedman and Ernest and y'all put some links in here. What were we talking about with this skit, man, Stedman?
One of the overall theme, I guess, from all 6 of his specials, kind of culminated in this one that he did, the closer. I feel like it's a commentary on Black life, the idea of minority, like a minority coalition, and the way that plays out practically. You know what I'm saying? And so specifically, he mentions the LGBTQ community. And at first, maybe the first 2 specials, I kind of thought he was just trolling. I mean, I understood he made valid points, but I thought he was trolling. But what I came to understand is what he was trying to do is present the situation of Black people in America and juxtapose that with the LGBTQ issues. And one of the things he said, I think it was in Sticks and Stones, and he reiterates it in this last special, is he says that essentially the LGBTQ community, transgender people especially, are just the same white people who have always been in power. They've just put on a new name. And so, for example, he says, why is it easier for Caitlyn Jenner to change her sex? Or he said Bruce Jenner to change his sex than it was for Muhammad Ali to change his name. And so when you think about that, you say, well, that's just kind of a catchy thing and that's deep. But why is that? It's because Bruce Jenner was a white man. And at the end of the day, those people in power are still in power. Whether they do self-mutilation, whether they love the same sex, or whether they love opposite sex. The system of America is set up for those people to actualize at any way they can, right? So this is why we have situations where we got men who've lived their whole adult lives through puberty as men, saying that they want to be a woman, and then a year later, after taking hormone pills, competing in female sports, competing in MMA and UFC, right? Because we have all kind of been co-opted into participating in this delusion in the name of justice or in the name of equality. And so, I mean, I don't have a funny way to put a bow on it, but like, that's what Dave Chappelle is talking about. You know, we look at the justice struggle for Black people in this country, which is what this whole show has been about, even up until this point.
Yep.
And the contributions that Black people have made to American history and its present, and the level of progress we share. And then you look at the LGBTQ community and the strides they've made. Let's just say they wanted to say Stonewall is a milestone for the LGBT community. So look at since the 60s, the types of strides the LGBTQ community has made in America. One of the things Dave Chappelle says, so all you telling me is if Martin Luther King would have had niggas in booty shorts covered in baby oil, we would have got something done decades ago, right? And so it's funny because he's saying things that we have been trained these last 5 to 10 years not to say publicly about other people because it's mean. But the reality of the situation is you had people in this country who've been struggling just to live their lives as people given full benefits of citizenship and freedom, you know, therein, who have continually had to fight through obstacles. And I'll tell you, I want you to pull up. So the link that I put in, I want you to pull up the link. It's from Gallup. So it's News Gallup. It's the Gallup poll.
Got it. I'm pull this up.
And so what it says is LGBT identification rises to 5.6 in latest U.S. estimate. So Black people make up between 13 and 15% of the population. You can scroll down more because it's going to break down that number. But it says, you know, based on 2017 data, 5.6%. So that's an increase of Americans identify as LGBT, right? So 10% of the country is 30 million people. So 5.6%
15 million
is about 15 million people.
Yeah, you just bust it in half. Yeah.
Right. So now look at this. Among LGBT adults, 11% are lesbian, 24% are gay, 54% are bisexual. So that's the largest group, meaning you just kind of whatever. It's a free-for-all for you. 11% are transgender, and then 3% are a maze up that, queer, same gender loving. That's just you gay.
What?
Whatever the other groups, you just whatever other categories are. You just want to feel extra special, so you make another category up. But of the actual adult population in the U.S., only 0.7% of people are lesbian. Only 1.4% of people are gay. Only 3.1% are bisexual. Trans people are only 0.6%. So what we see, 0.6% is what? 1 million people? 1.5 million?
Yeah, maybe.
So you have the governor of California signing a law saying that you got to have gender neutral spaces inside of stores for children. And that's only 1.5 million people. And here we got 40 to 45 million individual black people in this country cannot find justice. And pull up this next. It's David Johns. So the first one is from I think it's a Genius or something. It's or Education Post.
Education Post.
Right. Pull that up. I just want to go through his bio a little bit. He's one of the people that particularly took offense to Dave Chappelle's stand-up special when he talked about the transgender individuals. And so here he is. He's the executive director of the National Black Justice Coalition. He's the former executive director of the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for African Americans. The initiative works across federal agencies with partners and communities nationwide to produce a more effective continuum of educating programs for African American students. He worked with different congressmen, Tom Harkin from Iowa, Charles Rangel, New York. He worked in Ted Kennedy's office, a senator, and it talks about his educational background. So he graduated from Columbia University's Teacher College with a master's degree in sociology and education. He graduated from Columbia University with a triple major in English, creative writing, and African American studies. Okay, he was an Ebony Power 100. Huh?
He was summa cum laude.
Right.
Top of the class, ain't it?
He was Route 100, 14 and 13, member of the Ebony Power 115, received an early career award from Columbia Teachers College in 2016. Now, can you pull the video of him up? It's the one with the real big, the YouTube. It's the real big link.
Oh, yeah. We can pull up a YouTube on him. Here we go.
It should be fair use, right? I don't know if it's, what's her name? Wazalewski or whatever. The lady in charge of YouTube.
Fair use.
Check this brother out. And where do you think his attention lies with respect to black community and black justice? Look at his hands. It's going to be quick. Watch his hands. Push play.
All right. Hold on before y'all go on me for this one.
And I'm the executive director of the National Black Justice Coalition. NBJC is the nation's only civil rights organization that is both intentional and unapologetic in acknowledging that as long as there have been black people, there have been black LGBTQIA+ people. Every American should care about the census because the census and the data used and collected in the census is used to apportion billions of dollars of resources. One thing that I've heard.
Okay. Did you see his nails was painted?
He said that's enough.
Did you see his nails?
He said he got the indication already.
So where do you think his concern is as it pertains to black justice? Right?
I mean, it's definitely not black
What's that
first.
acronym? Yo, play that acronym back, bro. Because I was like, what? That was a new one. He said, let him play the acronym, dog.
LGBTQIA+. You saying a mouthful of letters for 3% of the population. You wasting your time getting out of breath for 3% of the population. And why? Because they
of the
white.
National Black Justice Coalition. NBJC is the nation's only civil rights organization that is both intentional and unapologetic, and acknowledging that as long as there have been Black people, there have been Black LGBTQIA.
His nails match his outfit.
Every American should care.
His nails match his outfit.
All right, go ahead, Stan.
But so what are we doing here? And so I want to bring this up. This is James Baldwin. He's speaking. This is an interview from the 80s. Because what you've seen, what I've noticed, James Baldwin is a hero of mine in his writing because he stood up for Black justice, right? But what you've seen lately, especially after he died, is white gays, and the gay community has tried to co-opt James Baldwin as a gay icon. And so he's got this interview. It's the last interview with a man named Richard Goldstein. It's a PDF, so I couldn't send it. But it's called The Last Interview or Go Where Your Blood Beats. And I can try to post the link or something. But if you look it up, Richard Goldstein interviewed James Baldwin. So he says, do you feel a stranger in gay America? This is the first question. And Baldwin says, well, first, I feel like a stranger in America from almost every conceivable angle, except, oddly enough, as a Black person. The word gay has always rubbed me the wrong way. I never understood exactly what is meant by it. I don't want to sound distant or patronizing because I don't really feel that. I simply feel it's a world that has very little to do with me, with where I did my growing up. I was never at home in it. Even in my early years in the village, what I saw of that world absolutely frightened me, bewildered me. I didn't understand the necessity of all the role playing, and in a way, I still don't. And so he's I mean, you heard it, but he's basically saying, you know, the word gay wasn't his community because he was Black. Right? The only way he's ever felt safe in America is as a Black person. He's never felt camaraderie with the gay identity or the gay moniker. And so I'm going to fast forward to a page where the interviewer asked him about white gays and Black gays and how different their lives are. And this is what Dave Chappelle is speaking about with respect to transgenders, with respect to gay individuals, and how the power of whiteness is still at the core of what they're doing. Right? Caitlyn Jenner, the whiteness of Caitlyn Jenner is still at the root of who she is. Okay? So here's what it says. Goldstein asked, do Black gay people have the same sense of being separate as white gay people? I mean, I feel distinct from other white people. Baldwin says, well, that I think is because you are penalized, as it were, unjustly. You're placed outside a certain safety to which you were born, to which you think you were born. A Black gay person who is a sexual conundrum to society is already, long before the question of sexuality comes into it, menaced and marked because he's Black or she's Black. The sexual question comes after the question of color. It's simply one more aspect of the danger in which all Black people live. I think white gay people, and this is the most important section here. I think white gay people feel cheated because they were born in principle into a society in which they were supposed to be safe. The anomaly of their sexuality puts them in danger unexpectedly. Their reaction seems to me in direct proportion to the sense of feeling cheated of the advantages which accrue to white people in a white society. There's an element, it has always seemed to me, of bewilderment and complaint. Now that may sound very harsh, but the gay world as such is no more prepared to accept Black people than anywhere else in society. It is a very hermetically sealed world with very unattractive features, including racism. So, from the man himself, the godfather of gay literature, so they claim. And he's Black first. And he understands that he's a Black man first, as Shauna Kim said. Right?
And we can.
And this.
No, go ahead, Stan. No, go ahead, Stan. I'm gonna follow up with your point with the video we got from Flame Monroe, who's of that community, but pretty much, yeah. So I dropped it in the StreamYard chat, Darville. Go ahead, Stan. My bad.
So whenever we see these instances where a Black man places his homosexuality at the level of equal with his color in a country that he lives in, and that country is America, in a country where you have been menaced your whole life because you are black, before you open your mouth to speak, we know that you're not with us. We know that the National Association for Black Justice is not on our side. It's not on my side.
Probably not.
And so what Dave said when he talked about all these different instances of the trans community, he spoke about one instance where there was a gay man in a bar who was trying to get a picture of him to put on TMZ. And when he came up to the guy, they kind of got into it, and this guy said he wanted to call the police. He said a black gay man would have never called the police on me. Now, we don't know if that's true or not, because you have some who I believe legitimately will call the police on you. But what he was saying was, you want to be a minority when you need our help, when you need the leg work. But when it benefits you to be white, you white again. And so I have a cousin. He's like a brother to me. And I told him this in 2012. It had to, because gay marriage wasn't legal yet. He's gay. And I told him, I said, I'd never go to a gay parade. I'd never march. I said, I love you. I respect you. I hope you can find happiness. I said, but I cannot support this movement in any way. I said, because the second white gays get to marry, they're just going to be white again. I said, the only hang up they got, the only thing that makes them even slightly equal to us is that they cannot be fully recognized in this country in some way. The second gay people get to be married, they're just going to be white again. And I said, you still going to be black. And this is what we're dealing with. When you look at Ellen is a monster. So it appears. She treated her staff, she treated her guests, her employees horribly. And being gay didn't change her opinion. Having felt ostracized at any point in her life did not make her more compassionate. It did not make her more understanding or considerate of anyone else. When she sat up there at the Dallas Cowboys game with George Bush killed 1 million innocent, unarmed people, lied America into a war, and damaged hundreds of thousands of American soldiers for 20 years. And she didn't have no problem hanging out with them because she's white. She's not lesbian Ellen. She's white, rich Ellen, and I got a wife too. And so everybody want to be upset at Dave for calling a spade because you're not using kid gloves. You're not treating me like I'm a minority. I'm special. You're not special. You got a mental problem. But we tolerate you because that's the world we live in today. I'll take a break. I know I might have. I'll take a break.
The opinions of
we are not anti-LGBTQ.
He got it right.
We just gotta make sure we understand. You know, we're just talking about the reality of the situation from the political lens. Let's not take it too, for the viewers. Let's not take this, to a level that it isn't meant to be. Anyway.
Yeah. We'll cool it down with the video because this is coming from their community. It pretty much resizes everything Stedman says in a few minutes. So
so we're gonna go ahead and listen to the Flame Monroe clip with Don Lemon. Yeah. All right.
I'm doing very well. Thank you for joining us. Listen, I've watched your Netflix specials and a lot of you on the internet. I haven't gone to your show in person, but I really do want to. So listen, your stand-up can also be seen on Netflix. What do you think? Did the jokes cross the line for you?
Well, see, I have 3 dogs in this fight. So let me start there. I'm black, I am a comedian, and I am transgendered. So I have 3 dogs in this fight, and I want to be fair to each and every one of those platforms. What I heard Dave Chappelle's latest special was the the overpouring of racism that he talked about, because I understand that he's talked about the transgender community, and some of the things were painful to hear, but funny, because as a comedian, that is our safe place. That is where we are the safest on stage, where we should feel like we should be able to say anything. Nina Simone said it best. How can you be an artist and not speak about the times? He says it in socially inappropriate ways that people say is not politically correct, but it's teachable moments. And there was no lies told. Here's the hypocrisy for me, Don. And I love my community, LGBTQ plus IA, and I'm saying it correctly because I am still a comedian first, but I'm going to be respectful tonight to everyone involved, because I have three dogs in this fight. The love of me as a comedian will always be in me, but I can hide that. The transgender person that I identify as will always be in me, but I can hide that. But the Black person in me, I can never hide. I hate the fact that we keep skirting around. So here it is, the hypocrisy. Dave Chappelle gave his friend, his friend who was white and transgender, who wanted to be a comedian, an opportunity to open for him. Dave Chappelle is one of the greatest to do it of our time right now. That was a huge opportunity for her. The LGBT community never reached out to give her any opportunity like that. But then they turned and said that he was transphobic, he was homophobic, all the backlash that he received from 2 or 3 episodes ago from specials. And she stood with her friend, the transgender woman, and stood against Dave to say, no, he's not like that. And the LGBTQIA plus community bashed this woman so bad that she jumped off a building and killed herself. Dave was not responsible for that. So who is? Because
Flame, we don't know.
Thing,
Flame, I have to say, we don't know exactly why she killed herself. But anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
Her constitution and my constitution are very different. The backlash at me, I'm not going to do that. But here's the thing: who we blaming for that? You're not blaming Dave. Dave gave her an opportunity that the community did not give her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Listen, Dave Chappelle is saying.
So.
I see what a lot of people
I think we can pause it here, but she pretty much summed up what Stephen was saying, that when we look at this situation from a racial lens, it's a lot of hypocrisy when we're trying to give all of these other minority groups essentially what Black Americans are still being denied today. And that's the whole point of this thing. So, you know.
And let me reiterate my stance.
Mm-hmm.
I respect everyone's right to live their truth and their freedom. That's a tenet of my own personal life, that you have the right to be who you want to be, as long as that you don't impose on me to participate. I believe you have the right as a free American citizen to live your truth. If you want me to call you a woman, I'm all for it. Now, whether I have to believe that you are a woman or not is another thing. But if you ask me to call you a woman, if you ask me to call you Flame Monroe, if you ask me to call you Caitlyn Jenner, if you ask me to call you T.S. Madison, if you ask me to call you anything, I respect you as a free person to make that decision. But what Flame Monroe said, what James Baldwin said. I lived in Atlanta almost 9 years. There are 2 separate gay pride parades in Atlanta. The white parade is in June and the black parade is in October. Why do you have 2 separate gay pride parades? Because white gays and black gays don't get along. And who's the one you think setting that rule? Black people don't have a problem with nobody. We done had to learn to deal with and live with certain conditions and people for 400 plus years.
Yeah.
What makes us think all of a sudden we're gonna be tired of y'all now?
Yeah. I don't know. But I think to sum that up, like the Dave Chappelle thing has been blown way out of proportion. I think that the line that if you can disrespect Black people and get away with it, but as soon as you talk about LGBTQIA, you getting canceled, tells you where this country's
think about that.
Go ahead.
I don't want to cut you off, but just to bring that up. So John Gruden, the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders football coach, either resigned today or is resigning. He called the head of the NFL Players Association. His name is DeMaurice Smith. He called him Dumb Boris Smith in an email, and he said he had lips like a Michelin tire. So big and black, I guess, and full of air. I guess what you're trying to say. His lips was like Michelin tires. And he said that 3 or 4 days ago. But they went through ESPN or whoever did it, or New York Times. Jariah, you could tell me because I'm not really sure. They released emails of him calling people homosexuals the F word and talking about how the NFL shouldn't allow gay players. And so now he's gone.
But when he said that thing about my man's, it was all good.
Well, let's. So in all fairness, right? All of these things were 10 years old, but you know what I'm saying. But see, what was leaked first was the derogatory things about the head of the NFLPA, the black man, and he ended up that was leaked before Thursday Night Football of last week, and he coached the game on Sunday. Then the New York Times got more emails that he had done. I guess a treasure trove, right? That he had with different communications with those who are tied to the Washington football team. And then like the Gates did all the stuff where he actually called the head of the NFL, the NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, he called him the F word, multiple times. And hence that's my belief. I thought this was going to be your man's in them. I guess not. But anyway.
It's cool. We ain't got to do your man's now.
Yeah. We are
can cover it right now.
HBCU, but I forgot about it because I was so into it. I forgot, bro.
but either way, nonetheless, it is my personal opinion that because he had insulted he insinuated that that Roger Goodell is homosexual, which I don't know if he is or he's not, but I mean it's pretty much under Roger. I believe the only reason why this even got leaked to the press was because Roger Goodell gave the go-ahead for it to be leaked to the press, because this investigation was an internal investigation. It was not an investigation that was unearthed like through government means or through a lawsuit or any of those. So those type of means. Sometimes how the public gets these sensitive type of documents. So, but yeah, either or, like I said, he was able to withstand the racial comments that got leaked out first. That was the first. It was leaked out first. Like I said, he coached the game on Sunday, but midway between Monday Night Football, right? Monday Night Football, it came out, like they was like breaking news. John Gruden has resigned from the Las Vegas Raiders, and it was like, oh, he said homophobic stuff, and he actually has on his team is the first open active NFL gay player is actually on his actual team that he coaches. So, it was a lot of emphasis in the New York Times article covering that, amongst other things, that a lot of different other things that it said. And for me, my whole point, what I wanted to cover for your mans and them was just kind of just say, hey, this is just white America. There's nothing new. You know what I mean? Like I keep always referencing that I come from the combat arms community, being an infantryman in the National Guard for several years. And this is just part and parcel of how white guys talk to each other. I mean, talk about homophobic, and now it's even crazier than that, man.
It honestly reminds me of Trump, because you just said this is everyday business, and then people got upset when everyday business was put on the news. But this is the business that got you to where you are, Mr. White person, Miss White ma'am. This is the system that has upheld white supremacy and caused all the downfall. These are the products of it. These very people. What are you talking about? Don't act like this is new. Same thing with the insurrection run up. Right. Yeah, same people. These are brothers and your sisters. Just like we used to say in our community about mental health. What was it? Old grandpa who be doing the sketchy stuff and touching the kids. Oh, he just a little dementiated. He just got some problems.
Yeah,
and
that's
we
just
act
his
like
weight.
that's a deal. But y'all act like these folks over here who got guns and shit and trying to shoot at somebody who don't look like them. And now they talking about people who don't act like them. Ain't nothing until they get in the news, and all of a sudden you feel like, oh, we got to shut them down. You just want to keep those skeletons in the closet so you can play with them alone.
And the crazy part is, like, I'm listening because I listen to sports radio. I'm a huge football fan, so of course this was the main topic all day, right? And it just shows me, man. This lets me know, man, about this white, like white America is white America. It always will protect itself. You have people, calling in, saying this wrong. This was a personal communication. This is 2021. And you know what I mean? Like this ain't gonna ever stop. It don't matter, you know, like the racists from way back in, you know what I'm saying, the Confederate days, they've been gone. You know what I'm saying? The racists from the Jim Crow days, they've been dead. You know what I'm saying? But this stuff keeps reinventing itself because it always protects itself. Like you said, it don't matter. The white gays are in it. You know what I'm saying? Whatever them, you know, all of them, they all perpetrate this, man. At the end of the day, they got solidarity. Where it comes to our people, we arguing about FB1, FBA, and Freedmen and ADOS, and you know what I'm saying. I was in the club. They said if you use this, F you. Like, you know what I'm saying? This brother told his sister this. She's like, if you ain't with ADOS, I'm gonna say it right now. F you. He literally said that, bro. You know what I'm saying? He literally said that, dude, to a female.
I was gonna say he took that reparations energy and applied it to his own people.
Yeah, man.
You shooting the wrong. You shooting friendly fire, motherfucker.
Turn around.
That's the thing. But that's the thing.
Fire, bro. Clubhouse is about to shut down. They're gonna unplug Clubhouse, bro.
They're gonna do it because they censoring everybody. But this is the thing. Even with this, we talk about this feminist movement, right?
Right.
What's her name? I meant to do a show about this. I meant to talk about. I had so much stuff. I don't never have enough time. But what's her name? The white lady. The white lady, the feminist. Gloria Steinem.
Gloria, yeah.
Gloria Steinem worked for the CIA. Her whole thing, she was working for the CIA. With Miss Magazine, all that. That's been leaked. That's been known for like 20 years that she worked for the CIA. Her whole thing infiltrating the black feminists, infiltrating the black community to make black women feminists. The lady on the magazine cover with her, she worked for the CIA. That was all intended to destabilize the black unity movement of the Black Panthers. She got a husband. All these feminists got husbands. They want to tell you, oh, you don't need, that's why you look at Kevin Samuels show and he gets a lot of flack. And, sometimes he be kind of off color a little bit. But when you look and they hear women talking, you see black women. I'm not gonna put up with that. I'm not gonna deal with this. The feminist white lady got a husband, bro. She not going home alone. She talk this shit outside. She don't talk this shit at home. She making somebody dinner at home.
Yeah,
that's a very good point. So,
but that's what it is. It's destabilizing us because you attach yourself to a white supremacist ideology instead of working out with your own people. They get you to fall for their tricks. And you calling your sister, you F your sister, who under the same oppression you under, and the white man, you perfectly fine with it. Whatever you say, boss, whatever you say, I'm with it. Where's the smoke supposed to be going to?
I
don't know, but we're going to have to start to slow this down and wrap this up. Yeah. So we got some hope for some folks, though.
Yeah. You are listening to Your Man's Now. This Your Man's. Hey, yo, who man's is this? Hey, yo, who man's is this? Hey, yo, who man's is this?
Whose man's is this? I need to know. I really need to know.
Hey. That graphic always kills me. Though. Right track.
Hey, every time I watch it, I find something new, bro.
How you got him to shake his ass?
Every time
cardboard ass.
I find something new, bro.
You got to give it up to Ernest, man.
Ernest, man. Black contraband, baby. Black contraband.
You know what I'm saying?
Bro. Black contraband right there, baby.
He's my hero, bro. He do this heavy shit, bro.
Yeah, buddy.
Hey, I'm glad we ain't got to pay you, brother.
It looked like this is a popular story on Black Enterprise. HBCU funding falls from $45 billion to $2 billion in Biden's spending plan due to Democratic infighting. Just to be clear, for someone that runs off in the comments and tries to correct us, we understand that this is about the proposal. This is not a cut to current funding. So anything that comes out of this should be a positive delta above what they currently get funded. So here's the issue, though. Let me scroll down to this picture. Who that? Who that right there? Isn't that your girl?
Yeah.
That's not a Howard graduate, aka sister Ski Wee, is it? Auntie Ski Wee.
Auntie Ski-Wee, I like it.
Auntie Ski-Wee.
With a side of curry.
Yeah, that's the one right there. Auntie Ski-Wee.
That's it, right there,
Ski
bro.
Wee with a side of
With a side of curry.
China masala.
He said a side of curry.
Hold on, I'm writing that down.
Auntie
I like
Ski-Wee
that.
with a side of curry.
With a side of China masala and naan bread.
Get you some blaze, some flavors in there. Look
You
at
know
all
what
these
I'm saying?
lovely 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What am I counting? 7. What did I just count?
Black men.
Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. All right. So there's you already put a story in the thing about that, I believe, Stedman. We already know that's a problem. So anyway, let's keep it moving. Anywho, so it looked like Kamala's homeboy and the rest of their crew couldn't keep their stuff together, and they had to cut what they was going to give the HBCUs. They had to cut it like, woo, they had to cut it bad. They just gutted it. Why are they even giving any money? They're going from 45 to less than 5? How'd that happen? Oh,
well, I mean, and this is a problem, right? Joe Biden's campaign was single-handedly saved by black people in South Carolina. And this is what happens. This is how you being repaid. You the first thing to go. When it comes down to bargaining chips, you the first thing to go.
40,
Who's gonna give him 45?
We get them niggas on $2 billion. that's $2 billion that they didn't have. God damn it!
No. What type of negotiators do we have at the table that the offer could go from 45 to 2? So let's just put it this way: no matter what, when it comes to reparations, we going for 100 trillion because you don't know if they might cut it to 2.
You better go high.
You better go real high.
You gotta go
You better go high. That's what he said. You go high and sick people. You know what I'm saying? You know you can go ahead.
I did the math on 42 billion because I'm 42, 45. What's a billion among friends? So it's $42 billion divided by 107 HBCU institutions. I'm just assuming it's going to be evenly distributed, even though some institutions have larger student bodies than others. Howard has a larger student body than, for example, Morehouse. But let's not, without getting into the specifics, that would be $392 million per institution. If we divided that by students, there's 228,000 students attending HBCUs. That amounts to $1,700 per student. Now, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, their endowments are as high as $1 million per student, right? And so $2 trillion would be what? Because that's 10 less. So that'd probably be approximately, just give or take, about $170 of funding per student. That's not good enough, right?
Nope.
That's not good enough for the amount of effort and work that black people put in getting Joe Biden elected. For whatever reason, I mean, we were against it, but, free will, again, I believe everybody has the right to choose to live their life the way they feel most empowered. But this is what you got to show for it. After centuries of no funding, because a lot of HBCUs are private, so they don't get any federal funding already. You gonna cut it?
Well, they're gonna cut the extra, if I understand it correctly, for somebody to come jump down our throat who gonna defend Biden like blue no matter who. And they're cutting a little of the extra, but that's the problem here, right? I was having a discussion with a couple people over the last couple of weeks, and I told them one of the reasons why one of the requirements, and you heard this from Yvette all the way back to 2018, 2019, as we were getting into the movement. And it was a very good point, and I take it to heart. One of the issues with having a child today is, as a black person, economically speaking, statistically, from an economic standpoint, we usually don't have the capital to invest in our children as white equivalent families do. And so we actually have an even bigger gap to fill than they even fill with the money they have, because our people aren't getting the money that they're getting when they go to school. So now we're making up double the gap. Not only are we trying to compete with them on everyday stuff, but then we have to jump over another gulf because the schools we send them to can barely pay for them to come there, and they don't want to pay for them to come there. And so I was saying I need to have an X number of dollars in the bank per child at birth. And they was like, oh, they didn't say nothing about it. But the reality is most people don't. And that's why we end up not being able, we have to rely on these HBCUs that have money. I had an issue back in 2005, 2006, looking at what is a group? The group that supports all the HBCUs by giving out free money to the students.
Oh, the United Negro College Fund?
United Negro College Fund. Yeah. United Negro College Fund. They're basically, at least at that time, their shtick was that they supported students going to HBCUs. You know, we've already talked about what happens in terms of, do you have HBCU near you? Do you qualify? And is it even good for your particular career pursuit to even go to any of these HBCUs that you can get to or get into? So really it ends up, it supports HBCUs, but it ends up handicapping some Black students at the same time. That's why none of this stuff needs to be tied up in such particularity bullshit. It needs to be coming down to the entire gamut of our entire lineage group. It cannot be, you can't snake this through a whole bunch of systems. This needs to be straight up reparations. And then these schools need to be properly funded so they can act on par with these white institutions that they're competing for students against. Right. But anyway, let me shut up.
Scholarships, because my wife graduated from Spelman.
Athletic wise, you know what I mean? Like, that's why,
that's why Deion Sanders is
Sanders
so
was talking about it, man, but and it's funny because he was on a show with damn, who has this show? Not Chad Johnson, but it was a wide Brandon Marshall, right? Brandon Marshall used to be a wide receiver on the Chicago Bears, right? And it's in other teams as well. He has a show called, he has a podcast called I Am Athlete or something like that. And he had Deion Sanders on, and I believe it was one of the running backs that used to play with on Jacksonville. Anyways, make a long story short, the guy was like, I understand this is cool, I understand, but why should I send my kid to a ACBU, right? Or HBCU, I'm sorry, HBCU for athletics when where he'll have a better go at a PWI, to get, to get freaking seen on, by scouts, right? To get to the facilities, are going to be top notch, that's going to prepare him for the NFL. Because that's where, you got you a D1 NFL prospect athlete. Why should you go to a HBCU? I'm saying it wrong. HBCU, right? Like, why? It doesn't make, and it basically came down to pretty much, it was more like a race thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you couldn't really, I think it was Fred Taylor. But he couldn't, it was a hard argument. It was messed up because guess what? Last year, not one HBCU athlete got drafted in last year's draft.
What?
Not one. What? Deion Sanders said that, because he's at he's a HBCU coach. I forgot he's some
Jackson State.
Jackson State.
Yeah. Eddie George is at Tennessee State.
Yeah. So it's like, they were locked out of. They're just now ESPN and them are actually showing their games, on national television. You know what I'm saying? It's just at every freaking level we've been locked out, man. At every level, dude. And it's kind of hard when you make that decision. Like, okay, do I be race first and do this, but at that detriment of me possibly being, like you said, and I can understand why people don't. But it's like you're not going to solve this until you get reparations. Until there's a federal government agency that is going to be directing, like you said. Now, don't let's letting us participate in a race isn't it? Like we got to win the race. What I'm saying?
You got to give me the finish line.
You got to give me the finish line.
It ain't enough to participate in the race anymore.
Right.
Some people done running.
So let's just wrap this up because we do have a hard stop we're walking right into. I will say this, like, for instance, the Democrats have always pushed us to vote for blue no matter who. Unfortunately, this is a clear example of a failure by the Congressional Black Caucus, period. They let this happen. Like, how will they even vote on this? We talked about Joe Manchin and what he's been doing or whatever. Listen, he's doing for his people what our CBC should have been doing for us, right?
Yeah.
They need to be holding up the fucking wall. They need to be stop the train until we get our money. That's what your job is. But they listen, everybody be glorifying them on their Facebook, Twitter, coming to their little events and saying, y'all done so much for us. And, you know, thank you so much. And, you know, and la, 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 la.
That's frustrating, man.
This is the pattern of behavior that persists not only at that level, but there are so many Black young professionals who pattern after that bullshit. And don't even they don't know no better sometimes, but even when they know better, they don't care. That's because collective uplift is not in the psyche of most young Black professionals today that I deal with. They care about what they need for themselves and focus on themselves. But the moment anything Black focused needs your help, no, I don't want to do that. You know, I got to work. You know, I'm trying to do this. I got to take these trips. And so when it's time to pass the baton from the CBC, the only people who are going to be willing to take the baton are the grifters who are going to go in there and continue the same damn ass detrimental program that's left us in this lurch since we came up with the CBC. They're going to do the same shit. These folks are not here for anything. I posted about this a while ago. They are not here for the constructive uplift of our community. They're here to get their butter biscuits, as Yvette says, and keep it pushing. But they run around claiming they represent us. Those folks need to be thrown. Sorry.
Yeah. That's it, man. I think we're gonna wrap it up, man. Closing statements.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you know, it's incumbent upon all of us to hold our leaders accountable. It's important on all of us to try to influence our communities in a positive way, spread information, knowledge, education, stick up for ourselves as our community, right? Don't try to latch on to some other community. Don't try to latch on to some other ideology, okay? You have to support your lineage, because if you don't, you're going to be chasing around somebody else like a dog. You're going to look like a homeless puppy because nobody else had no respect for you. You latch on to the LGBT or whatever, they don't have you. The communists, the socialists, they don't have you. Your community is the only one that got your back, and half of them is trying to sell you out too.
All right, Rocky.
Hey, man, we have no permanent friends. We have no permanent enemies. All we have is permanent interests. And the thing is, we got to know what's in our permanent interests. And our permanent interest is our people, man. We got to be willing, to say no to the BS, man, not to go along with the status quo, what's politically expedient, what's financially expedient, you know what I'm saying, what is politically correct or what have you. Like Dave Chappelle, you got to be able to, be able to stand on yours, man. All 10 toes down. I'm all 10 toes down. I'm a free man. I don't apologize for that at all. I've been told, you sound like you racist. I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, I am then. That's your definition. Because I'm pro people. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, man. 100%. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm pro the descendants of freedmen, man. F1 all day, every day. You know what I mean? Day one policies for day one citizens, man. Day one people, day one citizens. You know what I mean? We've been here the longest, bro. And we just because not too many of us have that type of mentality and mind frame. That's how we get sold out, man. Sold down the river, man. You know what I mean?
Bro, I got cats sitting right now representing everybody except us. Yeah, and they get money to represent everybody except us. And they ain't got no intention on doing anything that's going to put they check in jeopardy. And they ain't going to never be nothing radical or nothing transformative for our community. And I mean, that's just how it goes. That repeats itself over and over again. It's getting worse and worse. So,
and their organizations got Black in the name. The National Black Justice Coalition or whatever. Come on, bro. Not dressed like that, you not. Not acting like that, you not.
It kills me when they put Black people in these positions to help be the ambassadors of diversity. Oh, man, when they take that check to be the ambassador for everybody, including us, that means we get a slice of a pie that's being cut equal to every other minority group you can conceive, but we are owed the most. How the hell do you accept representing and championing something like that? That's crazy. Anyway, y'all, We out. The Freedmen Collective, just so you know. All right.
Peace, peace, peace.
Be safe.